Hello, everyone. All right, hi. Welcome to this special edition of Pizza and Perspectives, Conservatism at a Crossroads, Tradition, Populism, and America's Future. A wonderful conversation with the 48th Vice President of the United States, Mike Pence. My name is Brianna Luterat, and I am the Graduate Professional Assistant for University Life here at Mason Square. Pizza and Perspectives is a signature University Life event designed to bring students, faculty, and alumni together across disciplines for meaningful and thoughtful dialogue on timely and relevant issues. This evening's session is hosted in partnership with the Schar School of Policy and Government and will feature reflections on leadership, public service, and the current political landscape, followed by an audience Q&A, networking opportunities, and of course, free pizza. It is now my pleasure to introduce Dean Mark Rozell, the founding dean of the Schar School of Policy and Government at George Mason University. Dean Rozell, who joined Mason in 2004, holds the Ruth D. and John T. Hazel Chair in Public Policy and is nationally recognized a scholar in American government and politics. Please join me in welcoming Dean Rozell.
Thank you, Bree, and thank you for the kind introduction. I'm absolutely delighted to be here. And my job tonight is to moderate this discussion and be sure to keep the time so that there's enough opportunity for your questions from the audience. So we're going to get right to it with the introduction of our special speaker for this evening. Mike Pence was born in Columbus, Indiana on June 7th, 1959, into a family that epitomized the American dream, instilling in him values of hard work, faith, and family. After graduating from Hanover College and the Indiana University School of Law, he embarked on a multifaceted career, including a law practice, hosting a talk show, serving as a member of Congress for 6 terms, championing limited government and fiscal responsibility. Pence then was elected the 50th governor of Indiana, focusing on tax cuts, job creation, education reform, and infrastructure investment while maintaining fiscal responsibility. His accomplishments in Indiana led to his selection as the 48th Vice President of the United States. Pence's conservative philosophy, inspired by Ronald Reagan, led to his founding, Advancing American Freedom, which continues to advocate for faith, family, and liberty as foundational American values. And I do want to add, since we are an academic audience, he is the co-author of an article in the summer 2025 issue of National Affairs entitled Rediscovering Order in an Age of Populism. And that is going to be the focus of our discussion tonight. So without further hesitation, I welcome the 48th Vice President of the United States, Mike Pence. Well, thank you, Mr. Vice President. It's quite an honor for you to be here. Welcome to George Mason University and to the Schar School of Policy and Government.
Well, thank you, Dean. It's great to be back in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
My family, you wouldn't have known this, but I was just talking to my wife a minute ago. When I served in Congress, our children were very young, and so we kept a home in Indiana, but we had a home in Arlington, Virginia, not terribly far from the George Mason campus. And so we had a lot of memories here. Our kids spent the school year here in Washington, but then went home to Indiana for holidays and for the summer. So it feels like old home week to be back.
Great, that's wonderful. We'd like to have you back in Arlington as often as you're willing to be here. Thank you.
I'm looking forward to it.
So we're all about the two-party system and bipartisanship.
I was promised this was billed as pizza and perspective.
Yes. And he didn't get pizza.
I see there's some pizza in the house. I just want to be on the record to say I have not yet had pizza.
Okay. You know,
despite my appearances.
They might save some for you, so I hope so. So anyway, we're all about the two-party system here and bipartisanship at the Schar School. So I wanted to ask, in that spirit, is there someone you encountered in your years in Washington who surprised you, perhaps a member of the opposition party you were able to work with very productively?
Well, first off, how about a round of applause for Dean Rozell and the Schar School of Government? I'm honored to be here. Thank you for having me. Thank you all for coming out. I appreciate it early in the school year. I appreciate you all making time and look forward to our conversation. I said most of my public life, I'm a conservative, but I'm not in a bad mood about it. And I've always held the view that you can disagree without being disagreeable. And during my time in the Congress and as a governor, and I hope during my years as vice president, I tried to live that out, to treat others the way I want to be treated. And I must tell you, when you say, was there one person, I think if you went back to Capitol Hill and found some of the old timers there, you'd find there was a lot of people in the other party that I got along with just fine. And because they knew I never begrudged them holding the views they held. I can think your ideas are bad without thinking you're a bad person. And I think the American people long for us to restore a threshold of civility in public life. I really do. But there was one person who was particularly special to me. When I was growing up, my heroes in my youth were President John F. Kennedy and the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Really, their eloquence, their personal example, their courage, and of course, the tragedy around their lives just inspired me greatly and helped really plant the seed of public service. So you can imagine when I got to Capitol Hill and I knew that there was a member of Congress named John Lewis from Georgia. I was drawn to him and was anxious to know him. John Lewis, if you haven't ever heard that name, was a close aide to Dr. King through it all. But he himself emerged on what came to be known as Bloody Sunday, when civil rights marchers crossed the famous Edmund Pettus Bridge. And John Lewis was literally beaten within an inch of his life. But that violence catalyzed reforms that really set the stage for passage of the Civil Rights Act and beyond. Anyway, John was a heroic American, and so I started to kind of observe him in the Congress. And I think John was as liberal as I am conservative. I mean, I don't think there was a whole lot we ever agreed on, except that I knew he was a great man. He was sincere about his Christian faith. I think he perceived I was sincere about mine. And so while we would joust on the House floor during debates, John and I took to walking back to the office together, and I would pepper him with questions about those years where he played such a central role in making us a more perfect union. And John's passed away now, but I'll always count it a privilege to have known him. I'll tell you one funny experience, though. It was right after I was vice president, and I went over in Congress. You guys go to school in Washington, so you know this. They have a congressional baseball game, right? Republicans versus Democrats. It's a fun night. So in my first year as vice president, I went over to the congressional baseball game with, a giant Secret Service detail, And we came into the lobby there at Nat Stadium, and there were all kinds of, everybody milling around. And I was making my way, and a lot of Republicans were there saying, "Hey, Mr. Vice President, good to see you. Congratulations." This was right after the inauguration, and or a little bit later, a few months. And but it was kind of equally divided camps. You could tell on this part of the lobby it was all Republicans, and on this part of the lobby it was all Democrats. And then far across the lobby, about as far from me to you back there, I see John Lewis. So I give John a wave. And he immediately not only waves back, but he plows through the crowd, comes up to me, throws his arms around me, and says, "Great to see you, congratulations." And I think everybody around us was stunned. That wasn't on their bingo card to see Mike Pence and John Lewis hugging tonight, but it was on mine, and it was on his. And I'll always cherish the opportunity to have known John Lewis and to have called him a friend, In fact, one of the great honors when I was in Congress in 2010, I was chairman of the House Conservative Caucus at the time, or the conference, and John asked me to co-lead the annual civil rights pilgrimage to Selma, Alabama. And I walked across that Edmund Pettus Bridge 35 years to the day after Bloody Sunday with John Lewis, shoulder to shoulder with him and my wife and our children. So, you know, the best kept secret in Washington, D.C. is that most of the men and women who serve in public office are actually there for the right reasons. They're there because they feel called to public service and want to make a difference for the values that they espouse, and do so with sincerity. And I know that those people don't get as much attention on television as some other people, but they're there, and you should be encouraged.
Great, thank you. That's a great message for my students and everybody here. Talking about values, I want to get to the point of your article about conservatism and populism, and I'm going to cheat a little bit and look at my notes here. So you're right that the conservative movement, once united by common ideals, is now fractured and, I'm quoting you, clouded by populist grievances and ideological drift. So what ideals should frame the conservative movement, and in what public policy areas is the movement drifting from those ideals?
Well, this is a debate. I expect this room is filled with people of all different party and political perspectives, and I welcome that. I'm honored you're here. But there's a debate going on within the Republican Party today that I spoke to in that column in National Journal. And if you have an interest in it, I'd commend it to your attention. It'll be much clearer than I am tonight. But it seems to me the Republican Party for the last half a century or more has been defined by a commitment to a certain set of principles that came of age, really, I believe, when Ronald Reagan became president of the United States. Less government, less taxes, strong national defense, American leadership in the world, traditional values, and the right to life. In fact, when I started in politics, I was active in the Democratic Party in the 1970s. Dean, I was the Youth Democrat Party coordinator in Bartholomew County, Indiana. That was pretty cool. 1975. I was only about 16 years of age, and I was in charge. Kind of a community organizer, truth be told. And but when I heard the voice of Ronald Reagan, after he was elected the first time, I started to pay attention, and I joined the Republican Party because I embraced those principles I just described. I was really raised to believe in them. Well, today in the Republican Party, there's really a debate between those of us who believe in that traditional conservative agenda, which I believe has not only been a success for the Republican Party, but I believe it's contributed mightily to the security and prosperity of the American people. And there are those, even some, I'm told, that are gathered in town at a conference today, and more power to them, it's a free country. There are those that would actually grow government, advocate price controls, who embrace the president's broad-based unilateral tariffs imposed on friend and foe alike around the world. When I hold the view that tariffs are taxes, and they're paid by American businesses and American consumers. So that's one of the fault lines. The other is about America's role in the world. You know, I believe America is the leader of the free world. And one thing I learned traveling the globe, a little bit as a congressman, a lot as vice president, was that if America's not leading the free world's not being led. And in a very real sense, there's a tension in our Republican ranks between those that believe in American leadership, that we're the arsenal of democracy, that we're to lead on behalf of freedom and stand with free nations, and those who would pull back, who question our commitment not only to supporting freedom fighters in Ukraine against Russia's unprovoked invasion, but even to question our long-term support for Israel. There's also, on the issue of values, there are people in the populist movement, as I call it, that would marginalize values entirely and not speak to the opportunity to advance a culture of life. So I think it's going to be an important debate. I'm actually working on a new book that we'll be announcing in a few weeks, just about these core conservative principles. And maybe next time I come to George Mason, I'll bring extra copies.
That'll be nice. And I'm going to go off script here a little bit. I just read your book, Go Home for Dinner.
Thank you.
I like it because I live by
You're the
that.
one.
Yeah. But I was struck by how candid you were about your first campaigns for public office in 1988 and 1990.
Yeah.
What went wrong? What did you learn from it? What could our students learn from disappointments in life and how you kind of pick yourself up and move beyond that?
Thank you. Number one, thank you for looking at the book. I wrote it with my daughter. She's a great writer. It's entitled Go Home for Dinner. The title came from the fact that people used to come up to me after I started showing up on cable TV when I was in Congress. People would come up. If you want to flatter somebody in Congress, you ask them, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Members of Congress always, well, let me tell you where I'm headed. Right? When people would ask me that after I got a little notoriety, I would always say, they'd say, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I'd say, home for dinner. That little house we rented here in Arlington and helped raise our kids together as a family.
It quintupled in price since then, by the way.
I guarantee you it did. Wasn't cheap when we showed up, but it was. But for me, you talk about those early days of my campaign. It's, the story of my life is one of being raised in a wonderful family. My dad's a combat veteran. I lost interest in faith entirely in high school. It wasn't that I left my religion. I left religion. I just didn't have any interest in it at all. But I came to a personal faith in Jesus Christ when I was in college. I made a decision to put my faith in Christ. But all my life I'd been interested in politics, and as evidence of the heroes that I mentioned. And so when the time came along at age 28, when I first ran for Congress, I jumped into a race. I came really close the first time, before everybody in this room, with a few exceptions, were born. And the second time I ran, I made choices that to this day I'm not proud of. I got caught up in negative politics in its early iteration of personal attacks, even though my faith informed me that I needed to be willing to walk the extra mile to turn the cheek to. There's no problem nothing inconsistent with my views and values to say that I have a great argument with you about issues. But I think negative personal attacks have no place in public life, and certainly no place in me living out my faith. But I didn't make that real in my campaign.
Okay.
And when all of it was over, I not only lost by a lot more than I did the first time, I lost a lot of self-respect. And in the months that followed, I found myself sorting out what had gone wrong. And it was that I had not essentially practiced integrity to what I said I believed. It all came out one time, Dean, when, and it was a rough campaign on both sides. We were both accusing everybody of everything. I mean, it was really tough. And I was sitting down after the campaign was over, and a friend of mine said, well, I think those ads really hurt you. And I said, boy, I'll tell you what, those ads they ran against me were really rough. I mean, the stuff they said about me, man. And this very close friend of mine said, no, it wasn't their ads, it was yours. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, I didn't expect that from you, based on what you told me you believe. So I always purposed in the next 10 years that would follow that if I ever had a chance to run for Congress ever again, which was the dream of my youth, that I would purpose to run a campaign that informed the debate, was about things more important than my election. and that treated others the way I wanted to be treated. And then was about winning after that. I'm a very competitive person. I love to compete. But I hope in the sweep of my 20 years we lived up to that better than we did the first time.
Great, thank you. And yeah, be true to yourself and who you are. Let me turn back to the main topic of conservatism and populism. Going back to the first Trump administration, the Trump-Pence administration.
I prefer Trump-Pence administration.
Trump-Pence administration, yes. Thank you. So regarding the core conservative principles that you talk about, where did things go right?
Well, I'm very proud of the record of our administration. It didn't end the way I wanted it to.
Right.
But those 4 years, through a great tumult and controversy at times, were years where I believe we rebuilt our military, we revived our economy, rolled back taxes and regulations. We led on the world stage. We unleashed our military to take down the ISIS caliphate. We isolated Iran as never before. We led on the world stage, and I'm proud of our appointments to the Supreme Court and courts around the country that uphold our core values. So I'm very proud of the record, and always will be. And it was a conservative record, and part of my calling right now in my life is that our little foundation, which is based here in Washington, D.C., tries to call balls and strikes. We try and say, well, here's where we see the Trump administration now hewing to those traditional conservative roots, but where they depart, whether it be on tariffs or on foreign policy or other issues, we try and be a constructive voice and an alternative.
All right, thank you. So I hope you don't mind my asking, because you said things did not end well. January 6th, it's more than 4.5 years. Can you reflect on that day and its meaning?
Well, let me say January 6th was a tragic day. But thanks to the courage of law enforcement that day, the riot at the Capitol was quelled, and members in both political parties returned to the Capitol the very same day to see to the peaceful transfer of power under the Constitution of the United States. And I'll always believe that by God's grace, I did my duty that day, and I kept my oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. And for me, that's what it came down to, Dean. You know, it was a cold day in January 2017. I put my left hand on Ronald Reagan's Bible, raised my right hand, and I swore an oath. And it's an oath some of you in this room may have already taken in some capacity in your life. Maybe an oath maybe some of you yet will take. You take it as an office holder at any level. You take it as a law enforcement officer. My son, who's a major in the Marine Corps, and my unworthy son-in-law, who's a lieutenant commander in the Navy. They took the same oath too. You swear to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. And it ends with a prayer. So help me God. And in my worldview, that means it's a promise you make to the American people and somebody else. The Bible says in Psalm 15, he keeps his oath even when it hurts. I know something about that. But I believe at the end of the day, those of you that are called to either elected or appointed office, and I expect an awful lot of Schar School students are. There's a great tradition of that here. I hope that when the time comes, you'll have no other view. Because for me on that day, I want to admit to you it was a difficult day. And difficult days leading up to that. But I believe I knew my duty was clear. And And I was moved by what that Marine Corps son of mine said in the weeks beforehand. He said, Dad, you took the same oath I took, and nothing else matters. And I thought, there's a lot of men and women wearing the uniform of the United States right now that are standing a post in a far distant place in the world. Some of them are in harm's way in ways that we may not even be aware of. And they don't get to say, when the order comes, they don't get to say, you know what, that doesn't really work out for me in the long term. They took the oath. They're going to execute the order. And so I'd encourage you to have no other view when your time comes. Be men and women who will keep your oath. Because I truly do believe the Constitution is the common ground on which we all stand. And if we will decide, left, right, and center, Republican, Democrat, Independent, we'll just decide that we all land there, we'll build an even more boundless American future on that principle and on that great charter.
Great. Thank you for what you did, Mr. Vice President.
Thank you, Dean.
Yeah. So I'm going back to the script now, my script. You note that the movement on the right has been framed more recently by what it is against and has transformed into the anti-woke movement. I can hear many Republicans saying, well, politically it's working, so what's wrong?
Well, I think standing for what you believe in sometimes requires you to say what you're against. But I also believe at the end of the day, those of you who aspire to leadership, you also got to be able to articulate what you're for and have a positive agenda. But I think after decades where I think liberal policies in many respects in this city have been in the saddle, that our election in 2016, we got 10 million more votes in 2020 while we came up short. And then the president re-election to the White House this year is all evidence of the fact that, I used to say this on the campaign trail, that the American people, where I come from in Indiana, the American people are kind of tired of being told. Kind of tired of being told this is as good as it gets. They're tired of being told that our kids' future isn't going to be as bright as ours. Tired of being told, as Ronald Reagan used to say, that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives better for us than we can plan them ourselves. The American people believe in freedom. And I think there's been a sense among millions of Americans on values issues, on spending issues, and a whole range, whether it be the crisis at the border the last 4 years or beyond, that Washington wasn't listening, that Washington was telling. Mm-hmm. And so I think the president tapped into that a decade ago. I think Republicans have tapped into that. But at the end of the day, to really build a lasting coalition to the betterment of the country, not just the party, I think the party needs to hew to our roots of what we know will ensure that every American can live in freedom and prosperity.
Right. Now, I've been pushing you on the Republican Party. I want to turn to the Democrats now. Because many of the policies that you maintain have drifted from core conservative principles, are actually quite unpopular with the American public, and yet that seems an opportunity for the Democrats to exploit, but in public opinion polls, I don't think it's ever been worse for the Democrats in terms of public repute. So where has the opposition party gone wrong in its response to the populist fervor of the right and some of the unpopular national policies?
Well, you can ask Rahm Emanuel when he visits the Schar school. He's probably a better expert on the Democratic Party
invited.
than I'll ever be. Smart guy. For me, having lived through those 4 years, through much of a hailstorm of political attacks, including the last 2 years of our term together, which were characterized by, harsh partisanship. I look at some of those polls about the Democratic Party today, and I would say to them what I just said about my own party. People want to know what you're for, not just what you're against. It seems to me that the Democratic Party got caught in the centrifuge of opposition, both to our administration and then to the president as he returned to the public fray after 2020, and haven't really articulated, by my lights, a sense of what they're for, or seemingly shown the humility to learn some lessons about where they might have gone wrong and where they might have overreached in certain areas. I will tell you, it may not be popular in this room, and that's okay, but public safety and ensuring safe streets in the country is the paramount object of government at every level. And having lived and worked in Washington, D.C. for 16 years, it's got a lot of problems. And I'll tell you, I give the mayor in the District of Columbia a lot of credit for her cooperative spirit with the president and with his administration about securing the streets of Washington, D.C. This is our nation's capital. It ought to be a place people can walk outside. My daughter and son-in-law used to live when she worked here in town after she graduated from Yale Law School. And there were many nights that 2 blocks from the White House, they couldn't go out of their apartment because there was gunfire on the sidewalk. This is not acceptable. And now there are ways to move forward with other jurisdictions. Washington, D.C. is different, both under the law and the Constitution. But for my part, I had a commentator reflecting on the fact that people were speaking against trying to reclaim law and order in Washington, D.C., even though Mayor Bowser and others were expressing appreciation. And I think that may be somewhere close to the nub of where the loyal opposition has gone wrong.
Right.
But I'll leave it to the experts.
All right. So politics are really tough these days, and I'm really proud that we have a thriving program in the Schar School of Policy and Government in a variety of fields in which people are training for public service, being in government perhaps, working in fields in which they intersect with government and society. So with all the negative talk that's going on these days about politics and government, talk a little bit about how much it's worth having a life in public service. That was the choice that you made. What can you tell them to encourage them about with all that they're seeing going on these days and the negative talk about politics and government? Why do this? They have many choices they can make. They're smart people.
Well, first off, I would say I believe each one of us has certain God-given gifts. If you have the gift of leadership, if you have the gift of administration, if you have the gift that would call you into some role in public life, we need you to do it. We need you to step up. Now, if you want a career that will avoid criticism ever, Dean, please tell me what that career is. Now, most careers are less public.
Right.
But President Kennedy said memorably once, to lead is to be misunderstood.
Right.
And so you just need to accept the fact that if you'll step into the public square and say this is what my conviction is, this is what I'm for, it'll come with criticism, but it'll also come with encouragement. The second thing I would say to you is don't confuse politics with the American people. Because the American people are, I think, the kindest, most gracious, most generous, considerate, respectful people the world's ever known. We just need government as good as our people again to reflect their character. But if you step into public life, what you will assume you're stepping into a foray of criticism and flattery, and that's actually not true. Most of the people that you meet at the county fair, if you go home and run for the State House or run for Congress, are going to come up to you and say, thank you for doing this. Tell me what you're for. And I love that. I would tell you, I've been out of office for 4 years, but I still get recognized, unless I have a ball cap on. But I had a woman come up to me, I was in California speaking at a conference last week, and a woman came up and she said, you know, I asked your guy who you were because you look like a politician. My favorite question when I'm traveling around is people go, anybody ever tell you how much you look like Mike Pence? And I say, all the time. They usually say, yeah, I'll bet, really. But people are great. That's where I draw my energy and my confidence about the future of the country. Because over the last 4 years, Dean, to be honest with you, thank you for your kind words about our service 4 years ago. But my wife and I have been, and it happens to this day, have been deeply humbled how many people from every political persuasion have made a point to stop me in an airport, come up to me at a restaurant, and just speak a word of encouragement.
That's nice.
About our service, particularly on some of those difficult days. And so, you know, the American people, I think are wonderful. And you plunge into that, you're going to find an affirmation and encouragement that you would not otherwise expect. And the last thing I'd say to you is we need you.
Yeah.
The future of this nation depends on men and women of integrity bringing their experience, their character, their professionalism into the public square, keeping their oath. But beyond that, engaging in the provision of government to the freest and most prosperous nation in the world. So, to borrow a phrase, just do it.
So in that spirit, I'm going to ask students to just come up to the microphone, students and other audience participants, with your questions. I think you'll have even better questions than I've been able to ask this evening. And I'll ask one last question of the Vice President as you think about your question and approach the microphone. So you've served in multiple public offices, member of Congress, governor, vice president. Talk a little bit about the positives and negatives of each role. Where did you enjoy it the most?
Well, I was a member of Congress for 12 years, but I am so glad that I was a governor before I was your vice president. Because executive leadership, that some of you may be called to, is very different than legislative leadership. I mean, I always held the view that as a legislator, my job was just to do what I told people I was going to do if I ever got there. I mean, and some people will do I call it the wet finger in the wind thing, right? You campaign at home, but then you get to Washington and go, I don't know, what's the most popular thing I could do? That wasn't me. For me, I just let my yes be yes and my no be no. And I just figured elections every 2 years, people could decide if I was the kind of congressman that they wanted. Sometimes I say, you know, to be a member of Congress, you just have to be right about your own opinion every day. When you're an executive, it's different. And that is, you have to figure out what the most right decision is, consistent with your principles and values. Because executive leadership is all about choices, day in and day out. The people you choose to have around you, the policies to advance. And we built a record in Indiana, had a lot of learning experiences, created a lot of prosperity, businesses did. But we advanced policies, Dean, that were very successful. At the end of the day, I hope, having been in a chief executive role, it made me better equipped to be able to serve a chief executive for 4 years. So those are the differences, and they're real, substantive.
Great. Thank you for taking all my questions, and I want to now leave it to the students, and we have a lot of interest, so I'm just going to ask very direct questions so that we can get through as many as possible. Please, I'll start on this side.
Good evening. My name is Tyrone Mitchell. I am a public administrations major in the Schar School, also in DIM Lab. My question for you is, what is the best thing I can do in college that will benefit me when I get out of college as someone studying politics in university.
The best thing you can do is show up. Okay? There's a little bit of a myth going around. Maybe it didn't survive to your generation, but when I was growing up, there was always that myth that when you grow up, somebody's going to someday call you and ask you to run for office. Right? It's kind of like in the movies, right? It doesn't happen, okay? What happens, though, is pick your party, right? Agenda you endorse. And I'm telling you, any Schar School of Government student, you all are standouts anyway. Walk into that party headquarters in your hometown or even locally here and just say, I'm here to help. And that practical experience of being in the political process and building relationships. I started out, first office I ever held was precinct committeeman in Washington Township in Indianapolis, Indiana. I was a precinct committeeman. And it came from the fact that I walked into Republican headquarters and said, I'm here to help. So that's my best advice to you at this point in your life. You're studying, you're taking on rigorous academic training. Just show up. And you'll see on the ground what politics is all about. And I promise you, a bright guy like you, you're going to have plenty of opportunities.
We'll go to this side, and everyone feel free to introduce yourself to the Vice President as you ask your question.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President, for coming here today. My name is Franco Luis. I'm a second-year student here at Scalia School of Law from Miami, Florida. And so you mentioned traditional conservative politics in contrast to populism. So where do you see that in the post-Trump era in 2028, and who do you believe would lead that movement?
Well, I mean, where are you going to find somebody that has served in Congress, served at the state level, maybe been a vice president, who's committed to the conservative agenda? I don't. It's a stumper. I don't know. I'm spending all my time thinking about what we should be for, not who we should be for. I actually think for my party, maybe our party, I'm guessing.
Yes.
It'd be more important for us to make sure that we're grounded in that agenda that the American people have rewarded again and again politically, but more importantly, I think it's contributed to the prosperity and freedom of our country and security of our country and the security of freedom in the world. So I'm gonna stay focused right there, and we get that right, the future will take care of itself. We've got a deep bench of extremely talented and principled men and women in the GOP.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Thank you. If you need a place to make an announcement in 2028, give me a call. Thanks. Please.
Hi.
Hi, my name is Amelia Delphos. I'm ending the end of my term in the Masters of Public Policy
Congratulations.
program here. Thank you. And first, I do want to genuinely thank you from the bottom of my heart for the decisions that you made on January 6th. Thank you for upholding your oath. It does not go unnoticed. And then I would like to ask about some of the more ceremonious parts of the vice presidency and the presidency. For example, Melissa Hortman's funeral, the Democratic lawmaker in Minnesota who was tragically assassinated in her home. I saw pictures of you and George W. Bush in attendance, as well as Obama, Harris, Biden. And it seems like to the outside we have an administration that is just sort of shoving off those more ceremonious duties of the office. So I was just wondering if you had any thoughts on that, or if this is going to become a new trend, as we move forward.
Thank you.
What was the occasion you referred to? I had a little trouble on that mic.
Melissa Hortman, the Minnesota state lawmaker that was assassinated in her home.
Yeah. Thank you. That was a terrible tragedy. I really do believe that what you witnessed there is not ceremonious, as you said. It's genuine. Mm-hmm. There are moments that transcend and remind us what all of our core values are and the deep compassion we feel toward family and the way we honor public service, whether in agreement or disagreement. I think that's what you witnessed there. I really do. You know, I said earlier, I think maybe the best kept secret in America is that the majority of people in Congress and in both political parties are actually good people that come here to try and do the right thing and look after their families and care about their communities. And I think that's what you saw there in that moment. And I would tell you, I was in Washington on September 11th, 2001. And for months after that, there were like no Republicans in Washington. There were no Democrats in Washington. They were just Americans. And these moments of personal tragedy, these moments of national tragedy, we go back to what we stand on together. So, but it's a beautiful comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please, sir.
Hi, I'm Phil Slaughter. I'm originally from Charlotte, North Carolina, and I go to Scalia School of Law just down the hall, and it's my first year.
Good for you. What year?
First year.
First year?
Yes, sir, yeah, 1L. 2 weeks ago, just
I'm
showed
very
up.
sorry. Very sorry. It's got a 1L. I say 1L, and it still gives me chills.
First, I wanted to thank you for obviously your decisions. I know you'll hear it a lot. Thank you for what you did in January. Thank you to you guys, too, for just doing your jobs pretty well, and everybody else that has helped out and get you here today. My question is, nowadays we hear all this rhetoric about liberal judges and progressive judges, and I wanted to ask you, do you think that the role of the judiciary has gotten too political, and what should their role be going forward?
I am, as when you get, they don't let you do this interesting stuff in 1L. Maybe by 3L, you'll be. I'm somebody that believes in the strict construction of the Constitution, and and the majority that, in fact, 3 of the justices we appointed are strict constructionists in the Scalia tradition. Justice Antonin Scalia, after whom the school is named. There you go, Scalia Law. He was kind of in the modern era. He was the original strict constructionist that said, my job is not to create law, it's to apply the law. And one of my favorite Scalia quotes is where he said, oftentimes I don't like the outcome, but it doesn't matter, because my job here is simply to apply the law. And so that's how I view. I honestly think that particularly, and I'm pro-life, I don't apologize for it, but I particularly going back to Roe v. Wade and some of its progeny and other cases, including the Exxon case the Chevron case that created Chevron deference. You can read about that. There's just far too much lawmaking by our courts, and instead of just applying the law and what the Constitution says. I hold the view that if you want to amend the Constitution, amend the Constitution. It's been amended many times. But the courts ought not to be able to find in literally the penumbra of the Constitution, you'll hear that later, literally means emanations. Well, I've seen the Constitution. There are no emanations, okay? It doesn't glow, right? I hold the view as a student of the American founding that the founders wrote it down, they meant it to be followed, and if people chose to do something different, they meant it to be amended. And so I'm encouraged by the course and direction of the majority on the court today to get back to that kind of jurisprudence.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next question, please.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President, for all your service. My name is Rithwin Kari. I am a freshman at the Schar School of Policy and Government.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And my question is, in the past couple of years, a lot of Americans have lost, honestly, their faith in the impartiality of our federal judiciary. So what responsibility do elected officials have in preserving that public confidence in our judiciary?
I think a lot. I really think a lot. I said one time years ago, you know, you can disagree with the Supreme Court, but you can't disobey it. I think it's incumbent on people in public life, consistent with that oath I talk about a lot, to say we hew to what the court decides, whether I like it or not, right? And I think there's been a bit too much of that, maybe on both sides, frankly, but it seems to me making sure that we have a court that is seen as separate from politics and and all sides respect ultimately the pronouncements of the court is essential to preserving the rule of law. So, thank you.
Thank you for coming. Oh, sorry. Thank you for coming tonight, Mr. Vice President.
Yeah,
my
thank
name's
you.
Taylor Worthington. I'm in my second year of the MPP program. I'm also from LaPorte, Indiana.
Come on,
Yeah. So I don't know if there are any other Hoosiers here tonight, but
talk to me.
Lovely to see.
That's great.
And I went to IU for my undergrad as well. My question for you tonight is, what do you think the traditional conservative movement needs to do to appeal to the populist voters that won Trump the popular vote last year? Within the context that you ran for president in 2024, and Trump, of course, won the nomination still.
Well, let me be very clear. Number one, it's really great to meet you. Congratulations,
Great to meet you
both
as
of you, for finding your way here. It's a premier school. I mean, you don't need me to tell you that. I think that when I say populism, I don't mean things that are necessarily just popular. I mean, these are things that kind of emanate away from and out of the traditional conservative agenda of limited government, free market economics. And it tends to be a meeting ground, if it's properly articulated, between left and right. I mean, that you can explain it. I think the recent decision by the Trump administration to essentially take 10% of Intel represented a step toward nationalization that the first person to praise it was Bernie Sanders, right? Now, that's a populist approach, but I'm not convinced it's popular. But it's incumbent on those of us that believe in limited government and free market economics to make the case. Because in first blush, you might find yourself thinking, what would be wrong with that? Sit down a while, I'll explain it to you. State-owned enterprises are all over places like Russia and China and other nations. We've avoided that in this country. Margaret Thatcher was the one, as Prime Minister of Great Britain, who wrestled the UK away from nationalization. They had nationalized almost all their industries with government ownership of all or part of the majority of the businesses, and it was crushing their economy. And so I think it's incumbent, the way you can win these arguments is by make the argument, be willing to make the argument, and not simply give way to the first thought. But thanks for noticing. I always tell people I ran for president in 2023, not so where you'd notice, right? So thanks for noticing.
Thank you.
Great question.
Yeah, next question, please.
Hello, Mr. Vice President. My name is Montgomery Vanek. I'm from the great state of Ohio. How are you doing today, sir?
Good to see you, Buckeye.
Your home state of Indiana and my home state of Ohio, we share a lot in common, and unfortunately, we both share, and for lack of a better word, the decline in the Rust Belt and the decline in manufacturing jobs.
Right.
You said earlier that you don't believe the current administration's tariff policy is a good idea. My question to you would be, how would you bring back manufacturing jobs into our country?
Great question. And it's the right question for where we're from, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, the heartland of this country is just a manufacturing bulwark. I used to say when I was governor of Indiana, I used to say in Indiana we do two things well. We make things and we grow things. And then we sell them to the world. How we would do it is, I hate to be a broken record, but it's how we did it before. Under the Trump-Pence years, if you will, just to be clear. We cut taxes on individuals and businesses. We rolled back regulation at an unprecedented level without compromising environmental outcomes or safety. We expanded exports. The USMCA with Canada and Mexico, free trade agreement with South Korea. We were well down the road to other free trade agreements. We were about lowering trade barriers to expand exports. I'm very pleased, and we were very supportive of this administration and Congress extending those Trump-Pence tax cuts. There were some in our party. Some in our party actually wanted to raise the top marginal rate. We pushed back on that. I think would have been harmful to small business. But I would tell you that it's something that you need to go back and check me on. But American businesses and American consumers pay American tariffs. Let me try that on you again. And then go challenge it. For heaven's sakes, go ask Grok or whoever you people assess, American businesses and American consumers pay American tariffs. The administration recently put out a chart that showed tax revenues to the federal government in the first 6 months. Remember the chart? You see it? In the first 6 months of the Biden years was like this. And in the first 6 months of the Trump-Vance years, it's like this. $160 billion more. Hard fact. With a slight rounding error difference, most of that $160 billion came from American businesses and American consumers. And I think at the end of the day, while inflation has been restrained so far, I think you're going to continue to see that have an effect on slowing economic growth, driving inflation, and I'm going to continue to make the case against it. But that's what I would say to you is you bring back manufacturing jobs by making our rice bowl, our sandbox more attractive. Everybody wants to do business in America. Everybody wants to make stuff in America. Make America the best place in the world on taxes and regulation, everything to make things. And then open up markets to sell what we make around the world. And that's how we in our 4 years, we reopened 12,000 manufacturing factories. 12,000 in the 3 years before the COVID pandemic. And I really believe in, I really do believe in, low taxes, responsible regulation, expanded exports, and trade means jobs right here.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll turn to this side.
Good evening, Mr. Vice President. My name is Lucas Granis. I'm also a first-year student at the Schar School. And as you already know, many Americans right now in this day and age are currently very concerned about the state of democracy and the rule of law under a second Trump term. My question to you, looking ahead, what aspects of our democracy give you confidence, and what challenges should we be most concerned about?
I just have great confidence in the American people. I mean, no one fights harder to preserve freedom than free people. And I know there's a lot of talk about authoritarianism, and that gets thrown around a lot, and questions about democracy. But I have more confidence in the country than that. And I've agreed with many of the policies that the new Trump administration has advanced. I've disagreed with a handful of them. Not many, but a handful. But the willingness to yield to the courts, to yield to the judiciary has been consistent. And I would fully expect that to continue. So be encouraged. But mostly keep your confidence. Other than my faith in God, the American people are where all my hope lies.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, man.
Okay, question.
Hi.
Hello, my name is Julian Weigert, and I'm an international politics and government major. And my question for you is, with the recent deployment of the National Guard to D.C., and now Trump's saying he wants to deploy them to Chicago, Do you think that's an overstep? As you've said, you're in favor of limited government, but at the same time, you think the most important role of the government is security and law enforcement?
Well, well, thanks for hearing me out on my earlier comment. District of Columbia is different. District of Columbia is established in the Constitution. It is not a state, so it is not entitled to the deference that states are entitled to under the 10th Amendment of the Constitution. And so while there was the Home Rule Act, I think, Dean, that was passed in the 1973 that kind of gave the District of Columbia more autonomy, it didn't abrogate the fact that the federal government has control over the nation's capital. And like I said, when I was walking out to the car, I ran into a couple of National Guardsmen from Mississippi, two nice young guys here in town, you know, just walking the beat. I thanked them, and so I think District of Columbia is different. And now there are other considerations when it comes to other jurisdictions and other states, and it's a much higher threshold, a much higher standard, and I would expect the administration is going to respect that. You know, the president speaks his mind. I know that's a newsflash to you, but I would venture to guess that you're going to see them, whether it's Chicago or otherwise, that while people get done kind of posturing with each other. My parents grew up on the south side of Chicago. My grandfather immigrated to this country from Ireland. It breaks my heart. I talk to cops in Chicago all the time when I'm passing through O'Hare and stuff, and when I have speaking engagements up there. They like me because my uncle was a cop, member of Chicago PD. It breaks my heart what's happening in Chicago. And I must tell you, it doesn't square with me to have the leaders up there saying we don't need any help when 7 people were shot and killed last weekend and some 50 people were wounded in gunfire. I visited Baghdad when it was still a war going on, and not that many people died on a weekend. So my hope is that while posturing happens on both sides, people will hew to what the law allows and doesn't allow, and ultimately it's the families in Chicago that are suffering. You can't walk down the street at night, and my hope is that they find a way to work together and square that away.
Thank you for your thoughts.
Thank you.
All right, next question.
Hello, Mr. Vice President. My name is Sora Cooney, and I'm another first year at the Schar School of Diplomacy.
Oh, very good.
How deeply do you think the second Trump administration has affected our allies' perception of us on the global stage?
Well, I think our administration changed some of the dynamics with our allies. I'm very proud of the fact that under our administration, our European allies, before we left office, they were contributing another $115 billion a year to our common defense. And they all committed years ago to a threshold of 3% of their GDP in defense, and I think one country had met that goal in NATO. And we engaged on that immediately. You know, I mean, President Trump and I are a little bit different. I don't know if you've noticed, but they sent me over to Europe to the Munich Security Conference, which you may have heard about with your academic background. And I ended up saying to them, look, America first does not mean America alone, but we expect you to live up to your commitments. 2 months later, the president went over to NATO headquarters and said, you people are either paying up or we're getting out. We said the same thing, but his got a lot more attention. But the good news is that they came around, and we saw much greater commitment to our common defense. I thought a week ago in the White House, the way European leaders came with President Zelensky and met with the president and worked in common cause was encouraging, and it showed the level of respect. Europeans, by and large, have never liked American style. They just don't. That's not a put down, they just don't, okay? And the president's bigger than life personality has probably elicited strong emotions, but I actually think the greater cooperation that we have with free nations, the more secure the world will be. And, but I'm someone that really believes, and has for the last 3 years, that America needs to continue to stand and provide support to the people of Ukraine until the Russian army is stopped and peace is secured. I've made that clear. It doesn't fall in the populist can of ideas in our party right now, but I believe it's what the overwhelming majority of the American people know and believe. Last thought. I had a quarrel with President Biden on this issue because while he supported Ukraine, I didn't like the way he explained it. He often gave speeches about why we should support Ukraine militarily by saying it's a democracy and we have to save a democracy, and that's all true to some degree. But my reason for supporting Ukraine is because I have no doubt if Vladimir Putin overruns Ukraine, it's just a matter of time before he's going to cross a border where we're going to have to deal with him. I've met Vladimir Putin. I've stood closer to him than I am to you, Dean. And Putin doesn't want peace, he wants Ukraine. And unless he is stopped, he's not going to stop. And if he crosses a NATO border, our men and women in uniform are going to be called into action. So I say continue to give Ukraine what they need to fight and prevail to a just and lasting peace. And that'll contribute to the peace and security of the world. Thank you.
I've been given the 5-minute warning. We're going to try to get through a few more questions. And wow, so many more people want to ask questions, but I apologize. Please.
Hi, my name is Aaron Yu. I'm from Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm another first-year Schar student. And before I ask you a pretty critical question, I want to say thank you for your actions on January 6th, not solely because of your oath to the Constitution, but more so because of your courage to stand up to someone that a lot of individuals in our Congress and in politics today don't. But with that being said, my question to you today is,
thank you.
With the American democracy, do you think that we are backsliding toward a fascist state?
Well, first, number one, thank you. I'm deeply humbled by what you said. And I always answer it the same way. It's God's grace that day.
Yes, sir.
But if I can make a general correction, we actually, aspects of our government are a democracy, but it's actually a republic, right? It's a constitutional republic with separation of powers. With 3 co-equal branches of government. And for me, the key going forward is for us to begin there and to literally call upon, and not just the judiciary, but also the Congress, to exercise that unique, independent voice that the founders gave them under the Constitution. Here's my example of that. Because I think I already said, I have more confidence in the American people than thinking we're sliding toward anything. The American people won't have it. Okay. But for instance, right now, when we were talking a second ago about Ukraine, I think the time has come. The president met with him in Alaska, the whole thing, and 2 weeks has gone by, Vladimir Putin hadn't done a thing. Other than to go to China and he's meeting with Kim Jong-un and Putin, Xi and the rest. Okay. I wrote a piece in the Wall Street Journal last week that said, this time has come for secondary sanctions to be placed on people that do business with Russia. It would literally break the Russian economy in a short period of time. And it has 85 co-sponsors in the Senate. And I, for my part, having been a legislator in the past, I'd love to see the Senate just pass that bill, send it to the president's desk. I think it'd send a deafening message to Vladimir Putin that the American people are here. We're going to stand right here until Putin is stopped. And so, for me, it's an example of where I'd like to see We don't have a problem with the executive branch exercising initiative right now, right? We don't. But Alexander Hamilton said the Constitution contemplated an energetic executive. We got one, okay? But the key under the Constitution is that while the Article 2 is, rolling, Article 1 ought to do their job too, and the judiciary ought to do their job. So to me, that's the key going forward. But be encouraged. All the answers are in the Constitution and the American people.
Next question. I think we have time for a couple more, please.
Oh, absolutely, Dean.
Yeah,
If you
good.
do, I'm okay.
I do. I'm game. Yeah.
Good evening, Vice President Pence. My name is Liam Coley. I am also a first year in the Schar School of Policy and Government.
Congratulations.
Thank you. You've made your faith and your religion a big part of your persona and your life as a public figure. You have also worked to pass legislation in your home state of Indiana and across the country to support religion and Christian values in the United States. So I'm just wondering, what is the role of religion and faith in American society today?
Well, you guys are going to think I'm a broken record about the Constitution because I am, right? First Amendment, Constitution. Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, right? I mean, the founders created a society where people could believe whatever they wanted to believe or believe nothing at all. And they'd never have an established church imposed on them, like the Church of England. But at the same time, they'd always have the right to freedom of religion. And I think that's, whatever your perspective, whatever your worldview, whether it's informed by faith or not, that's something that Americans have always cherished and always should. But for me, I hope my own faith is more. I love what C.S. Lewis said one time, that he said he wasn't sure that always that prayer changes things, but he said prayer changes me. I mean, I would hope that the principal impact of faith in my life is being a man of my word, keeping my word to my family, keeping my word to the people that elected me, and treating others the way I want to be treated. So I think we skip over that a lot, and we get to the hot button issues of the day instead of the qualities of leadership and character that really was the common bond. I talked about John Lewis earlier. That was the common bond between John Lewis and I. He was a man of deep Christian faith and very gracious man, tough competitor, but we were very good friends because we agreed on what mattered most in terms of the way we should carry ourselves. So, thanks for the question.
Thank you, Vice President Pence.
So my staff keeps giving me the time limit signal, but Vice President's been so gracious to say he'd take a few more, so
yeah,
I hope it's okay. Next, please.
Good evening, Mr. Vice President. My name is Nate Palsgrove. I'm from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I want to say I admire your faith, and I thank you for your service. My question for you is, what decision did you make as Vice President of the United States that you regret the most?
Decision I made as Vice President that I regretted the most?
Yes, sir.
I don't really have a list, to be honest with you. We felt called to step forward in that role. When I got the phone call, I couldn't believe it. In the summer of 2016, a mutual friend of the candidate, then guy I called Donald back then, called me up and said, hey, some friend of mine wanted to know if you want to be considered to be vice president. I was shocked because I had endorsed Ted Cruz in the primary in Indiana. I was governor of Indiana at the time. And I was like, did you call the right person? Because, this is Mike Pence in Indiana. And my wife and I talked about it, prayed about it, and we came back to him and said, you know, we really don't know them that well. We need to spend some time with them. We need to know if we're, you know, what the role of vice president in his mind would be before we'd know how to answer. So they invited us to Bedminster like a week later and said, come on out, spend the whole weekend, bring your family. And on that weekend, we just felt a great commonality in terms of where we thought the country needed to head, in terms of reviving the economy and strengthening the military and conservative jurists on our courts. And in an odd way, you know, I mean, the president's grandfather immigrated to this country. My grandfather immigrated. His dad built a business in New York that he grew up around. My dad built a gas station business in Indiana. I mean, both of us kind of grew up in the American dream. And I always tell people, other than a whole lot of zeros, we had a lot in common, all right? But you know, once we made that decision and we said yes, I really never looked back because I felt I was where I was supposed to be doing what I was supposed to be doing. And as I said earlier, I'm proud of that record. Now, were there lessons to learn? You know, that COVID experience for the whole country? Lots of lessons to learn. And I think we ought to spend some time learning them. But the opportunity to serve was always a privilege. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and having read Go Home for Dinner, I'm feeling a little guilty keeping you here later, but go ahead. All right, please.
Hello, how's it going, Mr. Vice President? My name is Victor Alvarez. I am a first-year student at the Schar School, Policy and Government, and I am from the Chicago suburbs. So I am very inspired by your upbringings as well, or your parents' upbringings.
Thank you.
Yes.
Love Chicago.
Yes, it's a wonderful city. My question for you is with the topic on populism and how we have been more politically polarized than ever, more divided on party lines. Do you think that is there like a world or sort of future that you see where you can see third parties or more independent parties kind of rise up and I guess take more prominence when people run for office?
Well, it's a great question, and I don't see it right now, okay? But as a student of history, there was a party called the Whigs that went away and ultimately was replaced by the Republican Party. And I tend to believe that if the Republican Party continues to drift more in the direction of traditional progressive positions that are the home court of the Democrat Party, that all bets are off. That honestly, the American people like a choice in public life. They like alternatives. They're looking for candidates that you're for this, you're for this. I'll make a decision what I think's best for the country right now. And so I think this debate within my party is an important one about the vitality of the country, but also about the vitality, the enduring value of the Republican Party in the minds of an awful lot of Americans. I do.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vice President.
Yeah.
All
Got
right.
a couple more anyway?
Yeah, a couple more we can do quick.
How about two more?
All right, two more quick questions.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President, for coming. My name is Colton Egan.
Thanks, guys.
I'm an undergrad freshman at the Schar School, and my question for you is, with all the ongoing conflicts throughout the world, what do you think is the what's the largest geopolitical threat to the United States right now? And are we prepared to deal with it right now?
China is the greatest economic and strategic threat facing the United States of America, full stop. Full stop. It's my other reason why we should support Ukraine, because I've also met President Xi. I promise you he is watching what the United States and the West are doing in Ukraine, because he's made no secret of his interest in Taiwan, which I visited in January of this year. A vibrant, free democracy in the Pacific off the shore of China. We've stayed out of that issue for literally decades. We have what's called a one China policy, and that's fine, so long as Taiwan continues to be a free and independent democracy. That's not President Xi's aspiration. And it's my judgment that we just continue to need to stay strong. I hold the view that we've got to make much greater investments in our military, because people say about the prospect of conflict with China, which, just so you know, in their war colleges, they train for war against us. In our war colleges, we train for war against them. It's the nature of things. But the objective is to avoid war, and deterrence will avoid war. We stay strong to our commitments in the Asia-Pacific, we'll have a peaceful future with China. But weakness arouses evil, and that's why I'm going to continue to champion the strength. But number one economic and strategic threat facing the country is China.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, last
Yes.
question. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Vice President, for taking the time with us to speak with us today and taking the extra time to answer some more questions. My name is Anisha. I'm a first-year law student, as well as one of the earlier
What are you
questions.
doing here?
I
Kidding.
ask myself that every day.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I love it.
You're going to do just fine.
So my question for you is, in recent years, we've seen a sharp political divide between parties. What advice do you have for current and future congressmen and women to bring back bipartisan civility and less hostility?
It's a great way to finish, and it's something that the Dean and I have talked about a lot. I just think, first, believe that the American people expect civility in public life. And they will reward it, not necessarily with immediate attention and ratings on television. But I think in time, over a long career of service and consistency, you will draw people to you as a leader. All of you will, if they know whether they agree with you on an issue or not, that you respect them. And so I think modeling that to the greatest extent possible. It's not always easy. I mean, I have bad hair days too, right? I mean, I do. But to make that your aspiration, to treat others in politics the way you want to be treated. I mean, Bernie Sanders and I served in the House together. And I tell people he was the nicest socialist I ever served with. And frankly, we got along fine. We've done television appearances since. We usually talk about families. I remember when I was vice president, I traveled up to his neck of the woods, and there were protests because Vice President Pence was in. Go home, Vice President Pence, right? Didn't bother me any. I'm okay. But Bernie Sanders put out a statement to his constituents that said, full stop, we got a great state, and we're glad the Vice President's vacationing here. And I honestly think just recognizing if you want to make a difference in the world, first be different in the way you carry yourself. And people will perceive that about you. If you're a member of Congress after you graduate from here, someday, which might come sooner than you imagine. And people they hear you in the debate, and it wasn't ever personal. It was fierce, it was clear. You made your points, but you didn't attack anybody that disagreed. It'll draw people to you. It really will. And I really do believe that democracy depends on heavy doses of civility. I mean, it's the reason why when you get to Congress, you'll find there's all these rules about debate. You've seen them on C-SPAN, right? Will the gentlelady yield, right? I recognize the gentleman from Missouri. So literally all these arcane rules about debate. It's imposed civility. Because from the very founding of the country and the tradition, which was a British tradition out of Parliament, there was an understanding that you had to maintain a threshold of civility to actually find common cause, right? If it gets personal, then we're kind of done. We're done talking about, and the American people aren't being served. but you can make that difference. And I got a really strong feeling that you will.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So God bless you.
Yeah, thank you. And I do too, because you saw the George Mason way this evening.
Very impressive.
They really showcased civility and asked some great questions.
Yeah.
So thank you all for coming to this event. And Mr. Vice President, it's a real honor. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so
Dean.
much.
Thanks, everybody.
In closing, I do thank you, Dean Rozell, so much for moderating the event. And of course, Vice President Mike Pence, thank you for coming. So I'm Melissa Terry. You got all the emails from me, and I want to thank you all for coming. Could you just raise your hand if this is your first Pizza and Perspectives? Look at this. I love it. Oh, very good. So just a little teaser before we leave. We have another one coming up at the end of the month where we're going to have former Virginia governors Bob McDonnell and Terry McAuliffe also on the stage, and we will also have pizza. And for all of you that this is your first time here at Mason Square, we have a great tradition of offering some wonderful programs just like this one, not just through university life, but through Schar, Scalia, the business school, Costello, Carter. There's just wonderful opportunities. So keep your eye on your email, look at the posters, and please take advantage of coming to Mason Square at George Mason University. We offer a lot to our students. So thank you all for coming so much, and thank you.